Scott, thanks. Scott, thanks very much. It's great to have companies like UPS in our state, and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. I decided to take my coat off because it gets a little warm up here. Plus, last night I got my feelings hurt. After the banquet, everybody was pretty, happy and talking about our speaker and all, and I went out into the foyer, and a friend of mine, good friend, said, "Dave, I wouldn't wear that suit anymore." I had on a pinstripe suit, typical boring man's suit, and she said that under the lights on the screen, you look like a pimp. That's what my good friends are saying. Elizabeth, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. That's right. I bet I could have bid off my jacket to several people in this room because I noticed the temperature's been a little rough on some folks today, but hopefully they've got that under control. Thanks to Paul, what an interesting guy, and his data is very compelling for the state of Kentucky. And that's why we decided to bring him on board at the chamber, because nobody was really interpreting this regional stuff. Everybody talked about the unemployment rate is 6.7. What does that mean? Doesn't mean a lot in the east compared to Louisville, compared to the west. So we wanted to start to do a little bit more of a deep dive into what really affects people's lives and their families and whether or not they can have a Christmas back in their hometowns. I'm going to talk, and by the way, they asked me to have this little segment in the program to talk about a couple of things that we're involved in. And let's see, where's the clicker? Right here? And I had to commit to the topic like 2 or 3 months ago. I said, okay, top issues facing the next governor. I thought that would help kind of get the chambers, some of our priorities into the conversation about the governor's race. And so that's what we ended up with. What I'd like to do, though, is to take a look certainly past this Senate race that we're all involved in right now and hearing about, past the next legislative session, past the governor's race next year, and into the next 3 to 5 years of where this state is going. And I'm not clicking, so what have I done wrong? Oh, there it is. Am I doing that? Okay. I got the power. All right. So we're going to look, what's the future for Kentucky? What's it going to look like? And that's kind of tough when you start to try to be specific. We can talk about general things pretty easily, and we got some of that. Ted Abernathy did such a terrific job yesterday kind of looking into the future, but I'm going to try to be a little bit more specific. I want to start with a story, and this was told to me by a friend of mine who used to be the president of the Louisville Chamber, and this was back in the 70s. He's still active, Charles Hurd. Some of you know him, still lives in Louisville, wonderful gentleman in his 90s. And I've mentioned this to him before, and he doesn't remember telling me the story, but he told me this story, and it meant a lot to me. And it was the difference between chess and horseshoes. And he made the comment that growing a community, and for our discussion this afternoon, growing the state, is more like chess than it is horseshoes. For example, in chess, you got all these different pieces. The rook, the bishop, the pawn, the queen, the king, and they have their own moves that they can make. And timing is important. And more importantly, you have to think 2 and 3 moves ahead. So for example, one of those pieces might be called transportation. One of them might be education. One of them might be tourism. One of them might be agriculture. And as you grow your community or grow your state, you have to think about what can we move. Now in horseshoes, it's a little bit easier. You rear back, you're at a family picnic, you rear back and you throw it. And if you get a ringer, you get what, 3 points? And if you get closest, you get 1 point, right? Pretty simple game. Anybody steps up and does it. And a lot of times I think we have a temptation to think that solving the problems of our community or our state are like playing horseshoes. We'll elect so-and-so and he'll fix this. Or we'll get another Toyota and it'll be fine. We look at transformational events and think, oh, we just need something that'll fix us. Where in fact, it's a bunch of moves every day, all of us in the trenches working to make the right moves and think ahead and make our moves, what I like to call aggressive incrementalism. How's that for a 50-cent term? Aggressive incrementalism. We got to keep plugging. Occasionally there will be transformational events. Recently I did a survey of about 50 friends and colleagues, Al Cross, some other journalists, Jim Ramsey at U of L, and some university presidents, some other people that I just picked out of my emails, and said, tell me in your lifetime what you consider some of the transformational events. And I got a flood of answers. Al Smith, remember him from KET? Al gave me like 3 volumes. In 1935, Clements got elected, and that destroyed the FDR New Deal, you know, a bunch of stuff. But the top 4 things that came out of transformational events, now this is back to horseshoes, where you do one thing and it's a big deal and it transforms your state. Transformational events: 1, Patton's higher education reform of 1997, which created the Kentucky Community and Technical College system. Now this was not scientific, and I might have asked one too many higher education folks, but that's what, right tied with it was Rose versus the Council of Better Education, which led to CARA and a tax increase, and this state attempted to jumpstart its education. Toyota, 1985, and the growth of over 100 plants that came here because Toyota came here. And 4th, Scott Casey, was UPS and the growth of logistics industries. Now, there were like 2 pages of answers. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'll probably write an article or something to try to sum them up. But other things like the state park system, integration of the public schools, toll road system, first female governor, Governor Collins was mentioned. You know, those types of things that people consider transformational events. Let me mention just real briefly, because Ted Abernathy did such a terrific job yesterday. I don't want to plow back the ground he's already plowed, but just to mention some of the trends that I think all of us in this room would agree are affecting us, our world, and our state. What is this? This is my lovely wife, Bonnie. I won't tell you the age cohort that she is in, because it would be unfair. She's not in this room. We were celebrating our 38th anniversary. Can you tell what that is? Huh? Rolling Stones concert, exactly. 2 weeks after this event, Mick Jagger turned 70. There are over 30,000 people in this thing, in this arena. By the way, Patrick, they were playing hockey the night before in this arena, and the night after they were playing hockey too. But they set it up for the Rolling Stones, and you can tell I bought really good tickets. Bonnie said, did binoculars come with these tickets? No, the reason I show this slide, though, is that there are about 30,000 baby boomers in there. If y'all want to see my T-shirt from the concert tour, I got it on it. No, there are about 30,000, and in 10 years, all of them will be retired and out of the workforce. I just announced my retirement, by the way, Elizabeth, right there. No, really, seriously, these baby boomers are retiring at $10,000 per day in this country. Huge implications for our workforce. So the skills gap that we have right now is only going to get worse because boomers are going to the beach, and the economy's recovering, and you're getting more jobs created. So it's only going to get worse. So aging population, we all agree on that. Jobs, skills mismatch. We have too many people without jobs, and we have too many jobs without people. And we've heard about that the last day and a half. Limited public resources. The state government is not going to have any money for the foreseeable future. They just balanced a budget. That was great. It was a fairly responsible budget, but it ignored the fact that the teachers' retirement system needs $400 million more. Just ignored it. And how do you do? That's 4%. You could pass gaming tomorrow, and it wouldn't cover that bill. So we got real problems. In the federal government, you know the situation. We're spending more than we have. We published this leaky bucket report, which chronicled the situation in Kentucky. Globalization. For every one of us, there's 100 more out there that'll work for $1 an hour and do either our jobs or part of our jobs. And that's not going to change in our lifetimes that I can tell. It's really, really profound. Urbanization. Take a look at this shot. Does anybody recognize this? This is Shanghai, China. Some of you have been to China. You're looking from the Bund, which was the old European section, across the river toward, what do they call it? I've forgotten. Pudong. That's right, Pudong. Fairly rural, I mean undeveloped, relatively undeveloped. That was 1990, 20 years later. Only 20 years later, look at that. Urbanization. And it's not just Shanghai. It is people from Knott County moving to Lexington, and it's people from LaRue County moving to Louisville, and Ohio County moving to Owensboro. Rapid technological change, all of us realize that. I was thinking one day, I wish I kept track of this, it'd be interesting to document this, that I think every day all of us would have to adapt to some new technological, put a new app on your phone, figure out something in your new car, GPS, whatever, almost one a day to just kind of keep up. And that's not a techie, that's just trying to keep up. Knowledge-based growth, used to as it's been said, people went to jobs, now jobs are going to people. Jobs follow people. So what do we do about it? Three things that I'm going to suggest today. One is to create a culture of competitiveness. And you say, well, a state is a state. What's a culture of competitiveness mean? Well, if you go to UK or U of L basketball, there is a culture of competitiveness. You go to Alabama football, there's a culture of competitiveness. And states are not all the same. We've got to create that culture. We need to enact a pro-growth tax code. Everybody seems to be for comprehensive tax reform. We are too, but you break it down and everybody has a different opinion. But we're a porous state. We have 7 or 8 other states bordering us, and hundreds of decisions are being made by business people and families and young professionals every day about where they're going to do business, locate things, put a new warehouse, that sort of thing. And so we are very, very vulnerable to tax codes, and trying to do one size fits all in Frankfurt doesn't necessarily help Hopkinsville versus Ashland and all that. Governor Beshear announced a proposal late in the session, basically said, he didn't expect it to be voted on this last session. We felt like it was a move in the right direction, and it did involve a little new revenue. Build economic development strategies based on regions. This is a set of paintings in our conference room at the office. We had an artist do 10 regional paintings of commerce, and it gets back to what Paul just said about this is 10 regions, he does 9, he's more scientific, but it's the same concept. We need to talk about right to work. These are some friends in our labor movement. We're talking after a hearing in Frankfurt. That's an issue our state needs to deal with. Indiana's done it. All the states to the south of us where most of our competition is, we've got to deal. It's a very emotional issue and usually starts out with emotion rather than facts. We need to recruit talent. As I mentioned, jobs tend to follow people and follow talent. What if we, as a state, and by the way, I asked Jessica to put a slide in here to represent student debt. She said, could I use a selfie? But she's paid hers off now, so that didn't qualify. But this is a beleaguered student, average student with financial debt, $30,000 when they graduate, $30,000 average. And so what if we were the first state to offer a tax credit to employers who helped their new employees with student debt? What if we said, we're open for business, we're going to buy talent. We were going to want to bring young people into this state, and that's how one method. We recruit industries. What if we started to shift some of those resources to buying talent? Escalate international trade. This is my friend Lynn Parrish. Is Lynn in the audience? He was here earlier. There's Lynn, standing in front of a Texas Roadhouse. The thing that's unique about this is that it's one of the top stores in the world for sales. It's in Dubai. Louisville company doing business all over the world. And we ship agricultural products all over the world. We need to do more. Dr. Will Snell, who's here from UK, did a study, showed that other states have concentrated departments working on international sales in agriculture. We need a more focused effort. And that's not to blame anybody, it's just that it's kind of spread all over state government. We need a focused effort to promote international trade. Address our liability climate. Kentucky, don't worry about all the facts on this. It just shows that Kentucky is out of step with our surrounding states in terms of tort reform. In other words, it's easier to get sued in Kentucky, whether you're an obstetrician or a nurse or a nursing home, you name it. We have not made that change. And it affects business decisions. We need to constantly be vigilant about red tape, trying to find ways in which we can look through our state government and find inefficiencies. We need to adapt to the changing energy landscape while preserving our heritage of coal and that tremendous resource. As somebody said, having our coal is like finding a bunch of cash in your basement. We have that resource, and as Mike Duncan showed, the world wants that coal. We've got to do that while being open. He said he was in the all of the above club, whether it's solar, nuclear, whatever. We need to adapt and be cognizant of what new energy sources can mean to this state, just as Toyota is doing with their automobiles. Number 2, build a sustainable government. What does that mean? That means you have enough money coming in that you can pay your bills. We're not there yet. As I mentioned, they passed a budget, but the teachers' retirement system was a lingering deficiency that was basically ignored. We need to aggressively manage the leaks. That's referring again to our leaky bucket report, and you have an update there where there has been some progress, but we've got to continue to do that. And it was three things: Medicaid, prisons, and public employee benefits. Those were the three main leaks. As we think ahead, pensions is the main issue. There's the update, and it has some specific recommendations in there of things that need to be done. In some cases, stay the course. In some cases, we've got to be more aggressive. Fix the state pension programs. I mentioned the teachers. We're going to come out with a proposal here in the next couple of months that we would like to introduce into the 2015 legislative discussion, where we require, the state would require more disclosure. You know, you'll have an actuarial say, well, everything's fine. Another actuarial will say it's doomsday. And right now we don't have the checks and balances in Kentucky to figure that out. I don't have the expertise. I don't think people involved in making some of these decisions have the expertise. We met with two top legislators the other day and encouraged them, hire an expert, bring somebody in here who can be a bulldog and ask these questions. Because it's billions of dollars, absolute billions of dollars. So we've got to work on pensions and stay focused on that. That's the biggest storm cloud on the horizon in Kentucky, I think, the pension situation. Prioritize investments in infrastructure, not just roads and bridges, but broadband and other things. We can't just allocate money to prisons and Medicaid and public employee benefits, and then whatever's left over, we say, okay, let's give some to schools and some to roads or whatever. We've got to prioritize investments, and that's not easily done. This is a picture of dormitories being built at UK. If any of you, some of you from UK, you've driven through the campus, it's amazing. And they're doing it with private money, private developers, without going to Frankfurt to beg for a pot of money. Undertake top to bottom management review. I happen to think this is low-hanging fruit for the next governor. Bring in McKinsey, bring in KPMG, Ernst & Young, somebody, and look at work rules, look at the seniority system, look at the personnel review. I tell you what, go find somebody that runs one of these departments in state government, take them out and buy them a refreshment and get them talking about what they can do to manage their employees, some of whom have perhaps lost their gusto. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. No business could do business that way. And so we need a top-to-bottom management review of how state government operates in a modern era. We don't want to penalize. You can't reward excellence in work in public employees because you've got these work rules say, well, everybody's the same as everybody. And I think it's time to break that mold. We have to concentrate on essential services. What does the state really need to do? And Paul talked about that just a minute ago a little bit too. This is the third main thing that I wanted to talk about, create a modern, well-trained workforce. We've heard a ton about that in the last day or two. What can we do? Here's, of the items that I'm listing, it's about, I think, 13, 14, 15 items in the presentation today. Of all the items to do, this is one not to do, okay? Don't back up on what we've already accomplished. There was a bill introduced this last time. I was there and testified. Senator Neal, you remember, with the teachers union. We don't always agree. We were there together with Dr. Holliday and said, don't back up. We have made progress. Kentucky was the first. Yeah, you can tweak it here and there, but it's new, tougher standards, and the business community needs that. We published this little report, Tougher Standards to Prepare Kentucky Students for College and Career. We said there are new standards, new tests, new scores, and the scores are going to be lower, and sure enough they were, but we've got to stay the course. And our teachers are really making that happen. And by the way, the surveys I've seen, teachers really like these new standards because they're understandable. We need to demand efficiency, accountability, and transparency. That can mean a lot of things. If the auditor, and Adam's going to be here in a little bit, if he goes into the Jefferson County schools and said, you got too many administrators, we need to do something about that. We need to fix that. We need that kind of accountability and transparency. One way to do it in higher education funding would be to reward universities for graduating people rather than rewarding them just for how many people they've attracted to their campus to be enrolled. In other words, move toward a productivity scale of funding. We need to institute demand-driven worker training programs. You've heard a little bit about that. What does that mean? Demand means, what is the demand? What does a company like Toyota need in workforce training versus What are the programs that we offer every year, or that the federal government has said that we will offer in this state? Turn it around to where it's demand-driven. I think that's very important, and I think KCTCS has gone a long way in trying to do that. But more work, and Mike McCall would say we have to do it this way. There's a worker training slide right there. Invest strategically in education and training. This was the chart we published in our 2009 report. I won't go through the whole thing, but just left to right, those coins show how big the state economy had grown in 12 years. The bucket, how big the state government had grown in 12 years. Look at the next one, corrections, that's prisons, had grown faster. Look at Medicaid, taller. Look at public employee health care off the roof, and these are big dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then P12 SEEK, that's your education funding. And P12 non-SEEK, that's stuff like textbooks and summer school and things like that. And I guess KET bill is in that coin chart. They just got hammered. And post-secondary education is out there on the right side in a week showing. So we have to focus our spending on where we are really wanting to invest, when we would say in education and training. Let me show you this. Education funding hit a peak in 1986 to 88 budget. 48.2% of the state's budget was going into K-12. Now, 44.1. You say, well, okay, a few percentage points. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Makes a difference in whether or not you can buy new textbooks, whether or not teachers get a raise. Higher education, it's worse. 16.9% back in 86, 88, 11.6. They've just been hammered. The justification being, well, they can raise tuition, they can do this and that, and get by. And it's, you know, I don't mean to be facetious about that. It's tough decision making in Frankfort, but this is the result if we're not really careful in demanding that we invest in things that will cause us to be a better state. Now, address Kentucky's culture of dependency. Paul mentioned this a little bit. I think it's time to highlight this issue. The purple counties are the ones where there are more than 10% of the public that is on disability. The average in Kentucky is 8.2, twice the national average. And it's not just coal mining, but there are people on disability. They have found ways, and of course there are folks who will help you get there. I don't know why I put this in here. I just thought you might find it related. There are folks who will help you get on disability. And it's not just Eastern Kentucky, it's not just rural counties. There is a police and fire department in a city not too far from here where over 30% of the retirees somehow find a way onto disability in the last year or two before they retire. I think it's a scandal. I think it's absolutely a scandal. We've got to focus on that disability and to take nothing away from people who deserve the benefits that were intended when we set up a safety net for people who are truly injured in their work. We need to aggressively improve the health of our workforce. Study the other day, Wall Street Journal, less than 1/3 of I've forgotten the age cohort, 16 to 24, of our public would be eligible for physical, behavioral, or educational reasons to be in the U.S. military. Less than 1/3 of the public eligible to be in the military. And in Kentucky, a lot of it is physical wellness. We've been promoting the smoke-free. Kentucky will get that. It's just a matter of time. I'd hate to think we're going to be the last state to get that. And also, we need to incentivize workforce wellness programs. More companies have gotten involved in wellness. And I think that's a trend that we need to encourage. So the three major issues I've pointed out, that we've got to create a culture, a truly aggressive culture of competitiveness, a sustainable government, and a well-educated workforce. If I had to pick one, somebody asked Paul a question, what is the one thing? I think, Matt, you asked. Well-educated workforce. The other stuff will flow from that, I think. But that's where I think I would go. And by that, we can then, and by the way, back to the chess analogy. Each piece on the board has a move it can make, and we're going to have to move a lot of things. We can't just wait back for the next Toyota. We've got to continue to move things, and we can go from good to better to best. So, top issues facing the next governor. Actually, I wasn't very happy with that title when we got closer to the summit here. We do need to talk about the future and how we're going to make progress in these various areas, but I thought the better title for us in this room would be Top Issues Facing Us. What are we going to do? Everybody in this room has a role to play in making Kentucky a better one. We can't just wait for the next governor's race and say, oh, so-and-so ought to fix it. We've got to do our part through our own roles in our own communities to make Kentucky a better place. So, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave.
We out of time?
No.
Couple questions?
A couple of questions, if you have some comment or questions
Or
to the
rebuttal.
microphone, or not.
Or rebuttal.